see you. So, welcome to ePayment Summit. Glad to have you all here. If anybody wants to move forward, please do. I've got two great keynotes here for you today. But before then, I'll introduce myself. So, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Angela Yore. I am MD of SkyParler. It's a fintech specialist PR consulting firm, and I'm also on advisory boards. I'm a non-exec, and I'm a finfluencer, which if you think sounds cheesy, I've got more finfluencers for you here today. So today, the show is all about educating, inspiring, and connecting us all together as an industry. So it plays a very important part in the role of the sector. And to kick things off, we have Richard Lim, who's the Chief Executive of Retail Economics, who is come here today to talk about consumer trends, retail, e-commerce, and he is going to tell you a little bit more about himself as he goes along. So if I can bring to the stage Richard, give him a round of applause, the first speaker of the day. Thank you.
Lovely to be here today. I'm not a finfluencer, but I have learned something new already today, so that's good. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the CEO of Retail Economics. Retail Economics is an independent economics consultancy, so we do things like economic analysis, econometric modeling, forecasting, and put consumers at the heart of everything that we look through. So we're really obsessed with kind of things like consumer behavior. What I intend to do today is just give you a run through how we see the market. A bit of a kind of a crystal ball gaze into things that are top of mind for me and also top of mind for the clients that we work with as well. So just to start with, the retail customer journey has become much more complicated. Has become much more complicated. And we're going through this evolutionary process within the sector. And if I think about the way that I used to shop as a teenager back in the 90s, I'd be walking in, if I wanted to buy a pair of jeans, I'd be walking into Burton's, and I'd be looking at a very select range of different products. And inevitably, that kind of customer journey was quite limited. It was very one-dimensional. But as we progressed onto this world of multi-channel, this was an age where retailers had e-com operations, but that e-commerce team used to sit in the corner of the office. No one would really talk to them. They would have their own kind of profit and loss function. They were seen as a separate part of the business as we went through this evolution. We then moved on to an age of omnichannel. And omnichannel is where there was the blurring of channels. The smartphone was really that piece of technology that helped customers bounce between those channels. And now we're moving on to this era of unified commerce. And so today's consumers are very different from the kind of experience that I had as a teenager walking into Burton's. They unconsciously bounce between physical and digital channels on their path to purchase of least resistance. And so the Gen Zs of today are being inspired by influencers on TikTok, or they're going to TikTok to research products, to be inspired by new brands, and then they might stay in that ecosystem of TikTok, go to TikTok Live or go to a TikTok shop, and then also order straight within that kind of ecosystem. So the journey has changed, and it's almost unrecognizable compared to the early 90s. We did a piece of research to try to quantify the different trends and the way that consumers are kind of bouncing between these different channels. I should say, actually, now, more than happy for people to take pictures, but you can have a copy of the slides if you want. More than happy to just drop me an email. Happy to send those slides out. But this is a kind of a helicopter view of how consumers are shopping for non-food products. And so typically, there's about 62% of consumers that start their browsing online. So it starts with pre-purchase, purchase, delivery, and then returns. But there's about 62% that are researching online. They're on social media. They're on price comparison sites. They're just looking at what's available that's out there. But then there might be a slither that research online and then go and buy in store. The reverse is also true, though. They're going into a physical environment. They're being inspired and having that experience of touching, feeling, experiencing the brand, and then they might go on and order online. But you can see there that this journey is much, much more complicated. And to simplify this, what we find is that if you look at non-food retail sales across the UK, there's about £100 billion worth of sales, but 50% of them, 50% of e-commerce non-food sales rely on some kind of physical touch point within that customer journey. So this might be the being in store and then ordering online. It might be ordering online, picking up in store, so click and collect, or it might be going on that digital customer journey and then returning in a locker, as an example. But 50% of that e-commerce chunk of retail sales is actually reliant on some kind of physical touch point. And so retailers, of course, are reacting to this. They understand this. They're changing the purpose of their stores to embrace that much more kind of digital-driven customer journey. And just onto a few trends. And so if I think of, like I say, top of mind for me, just going to quickly go through 3 trends that I see that are being really disruptive within the retail sector. So AI, I know we've barely been here for 5 minutes, and I've already said AI, but I'm sure this is going to be a really kind of popular term throughout the day. But of course, AI touches all parts of the retail operating model, whether that's personalization, better demand forecasting, supply chain optimization, but less focus is placed on how this might impact consumers and the journey that consumers go on in terms of discovering brands and actually how they buy. And if you ask consumers whether or not they are using AI at the moment, so this research is only a couple of months old, but if you ask people whether they're using AI tools like ChatGPT or others, what we find is that as you can see, there's about 15% of people that say they use AI tools on a regular basis. It's very heavily weighted towards younger consumers, as you can see there on that bottom row. And actually, when it comes to affluence, it's quite evenly spread. And then there's about a quarter of consumers that say that they've used AI tools like GPT, but not that regularly. About another quarter of consumers that say they've heard of it, but they haven't really used it. But from my view of the market, it's really important. I think we're going to move very fast in this area, and it's really important for brands and retailers to think about how AI is going to impact the customer journey. It's really interesting to see what's happening with Google at the moment, and Google are using generative experiences. And so instead of your typical kind of type in a search query, Google are trialing more conversational-based search with more prompting and more intent that goes behind that. So an example could be that instead of searching for a holiday within Mexico, you might be searching for, I've got 2 children, I'm looking for a holiday between these particular values, I don't want to travel more than 8 hours, what are my options? And then that turns into a more conversational search basis, and I think that's going to be quite influential when it comes to how that's going to affect the journey. Marketplaces, of course, this is another area of huge disruption. Some of this is around re-commerce and also around what's happening within the general retail sector and tapping into marketplaces. So I was at a really interesting conference a couple of weeks ago with B&Q, and of course they're leaning heavily into marketplaces. They've gone from a SKU range of about 125,000 products to over 1 million products in about the last 12 months or so. So it's really, really impressive what they're doing in this area. But there are others. There's Boots that are looking at marketplaces, Tesco launching a marketplace. Of course, Next have got a marketplace as Zalando. So it's a really interesting area. It's going to be disruptive. It's going to bring almost endless choice to consumers, but it's going to affect, of course, the way that they start their journey as well. In terms of re-commerce, again, an area that's absolutely exploding. You've got the likes of Vinted that are being really, really disruptive, especially within the apparel sector. But actually, we estimate that re-commerce is worth about £7 billion in the UK market. So it's a kind of a big chunk. We think that it's going to double in the next 5 years. So we're going to see quite aggressive growth, a kind of an average growth rate of about 12% every year going forwards. And actually, people are leaning into the second-hand marketplaces because there's virtually kind of frictionless access to them. And so about 50% of people say that they have bought a second-hand product on a second-hand marketplace within the last 12 months. Almost 50% have sold something on a second-hand marketplace within the last 12 months as well. And so the barriers to accessing marketplaces for second-hands are virtually kind of non-existent now. There's lots of drivers that are pushing people in this direction, whether that's economic drivers because of the cost of living crisis, better technology because that's seamless access. But all of these things together have made a thriving second-hand marketplace. And actually what it means is that the residual value for second-hand products is also rising. And consumers realize this. They're taking better care of their products because they realize that there's a second-hand market to sell their products on afterwards as well. So another area that's really interesting. And the final area is around digital transformation. And so digital transformation is, of course, we've been talking about this for the last decade. But what is clear now is that those businesses, those retailers that have invested in digital transformation have seen better commercial returns. We did a piece of research that looked at the top 100 largest European listed retailers. We gathered over 1 million data points looking at different pillars of digital transformation, whether that was around the sophistication of their digital proposition, whether or not they had digital skills within the business, lots of different data that we collected. And then we got that 100 largest retailers and we put them into 3 buckets. We had digital leaders, digital followers, and digital latecomers. And then what we really wanted to understand is that over the last 8 to 10 years, whether that investment in digital and the sophistication of their digital proposition had actually led to better commercial returns. And so what we saw with this is that digital leaders significantly outpaced all other groups in terms of the return, in terms of their revenue growth. So you can see their average revenue growth of 5% a year, but they also had better profitability as well. So even through the pandemic, they managed to navigate those challenges around the pandemic by being able to lean on their digital proposition more so than other parts of the market, but they consistently saw better profitability. They also saw better return on investment, better share price performance. They managed to protect and grow their market share over this period of time as well. But essentially, those businesses that had embraced digital change, digital transformation, have outperformed others. In my view, we're seeing a gulf opening up within the retail space between those businesses that have really invested in digital and those that haven't. That gulf in the middle is making it more difficult for some parts of the market to close that gap as everyone is accelerating away. What I would say is that the last 10 years is not a good reflection of the next 10 years, and actually access to some of these digital platforms and technology has become more accessible for brands and retailers to be able to utilize. So it will be interesting to see what happens going forwards. And why is all of this important? It's critical because it's harder to make any money in the retail sector. And if you look at the top 150 retailers in the UK, we've seen pre-tax profit margins almost halve over the last 10 years. So this just shows pre-tax profit margins of that group of retailers. So it's more difficult, and so leaning into that kind of better driver for efficiency, productivity, using digital to be able to do that is really, really important. Okay, that's me done. Shameless self-promotion. Please do follow me on LinkedIn. If you want a copy of the slides, please do just drop me an email or connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'll be more than happy to share them. Thank you very much.